This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the month of January 2020. My name is Vern Carlson, and I'm the chairman of the commission. Before we get going, we have a few public hearings to listen to tonight, and some under other, I don't believe any site plans. Under the public hearings, of course, the applicant will present the application, and then if there's anybody here after the commission is through with their questioning, we go to the public and ask them if they have any input for or against or any questions. And with that being said, let me introduce our staff to you. To my extreme right is Andy Bellavacquez, our town engineer. Next to him is Alan Fredrickson, our land use administrator. To my extreme left is Mary Lee Radjuski. She is our court reporter. And next to her is Pam Miller, our staff secretary. With that being said, we'll start off to my left. Rodney?
Rod Williams, alternate.
Jim Giletti, regular member.
Teresa Ranciato-Vili, secretary.
Richard Wilson, vice chairman.
Brian Cummings, regular member.
Paul Lyman, alternate.
Paul Wyman, let me introduce Paul Wyman. He's a new member of the commission. He's here for his first night tonight, so we'll call on him for quite a few. All right, with that being said, Alan, is there any changes to the agenda?
There is a change. Item number one, number P19-37, has requested to be continued to the February meeting.
Okay. Anything
They have
else?
granted the commission an extension to act.
They did grant us an extension. Okay. Anything else, on?
No, that's the only change I'm aware of.
Okay. With that being said, we'll go to our first public hearing, which is P19-38. Teresa, would you please read it in?
Sure. Number P19-38, application of Timothy J. Lee, applicant, proposed amendment to the North Haven zoning regulations to add section 5.2.1.63 to permit retail store uses on Saca Point Road between Route 5 and Universal Drive. The proposed amendment is on file in the land use office and is in the office of the town clerk.
Good evening. Happy New Year. For the record, my name is Timothy Lee. I'm an attorney with an address of 388 Orange Street in New Haven. Although I'm nominally the applicant tonight, I'm really here on behalf of the Kitchen Company, who is the owner of the property at 370 Saca Point Road in North Haven. It's our application. The property itself is located in the industrial zone, and we're here to seek an amendment to the industrial zone to allow certain retail uses of property on Saca Point Road in the industrial zone in between State Street and Universal Drive. There's a stretch there of uses. Some have retail components, some have work-related trade components and stuff, things like that. My client operates the kitchen factory. They make kitchen components, they make cabinets, that type of thing. They also have a new tenant in their building, the Frugal Furniture Store, which is a retail furniture outlet. They're seeking this zone change to allow retail uses, a permitted use in the zone, in order to allow the Frugal Furniture Company to continue to carry on their business. I think in particular, the retail use is appropriate for this location with the advent of the development off Universal Drive. Universal Drive, as you all know, is a retail outlet operation. Saca Point Road is a major thoroughfare to get to the Universal Drive, and there are a number of uses there which are semi-retail in nature. So we think by officially allowing retail uses at the property, it would be fitted nicely with the Universal Drive. And going through the permitted uses right now in the industrial zone, there are a number of similar type uses. In particular, retail liquor stores are already permitted in the industrial zone. The retail bakery is permitted. Basic neighborhood stores are permitted, which would include a drugstore, a florist, a food store, and a hardware store. Eating and drinking establishments are permitted, restaurants, taverns, and the commission amended the regulations a couple years ago to allow billiards. So there already is a fair amount of non-industrial uses which are permitted along that stretch of Sackett Point Road. So we're asking the commission to expand that to allow some additional retail in addition to what's allowed there right now.
Well, I looked at the amendment that you have there, Tim, and we'll see what the commissioner has to say, but I think it could be broadened upon a little bit, and you have it going from the river, from Quinnipiac River to the railroad tracks. Is that correct?
Well, originally I had it going from State Street down to Universal Drive. However, the two uses that are along State Street on Sackett Point Road are UPS and the Postal Service.
Right.
They're actually not located in the industrial zone. So if the commission saw it fit, we can certainly modify our application to start it at the railroad tracks or expand it wherever the commission deems it appropriate. Because the UPS store and the Postal Service have, although they're not necessarily retail, they do have retail components to those uses. So we initially included them in the proposal, but really they're in a different zone. They're not zoned industrial.
Right, but if we do this thing right, and which we've certainly got time to do it, under the circumstances, we can broaden upon it, bring it up from the railroad tracks across from Universal Drive, and bring it from railroad track to railroad tracks, and put some other uses in there that might be beneficial to the people that own those properties there.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the town, over the last decade or so, has contemplated zone changes or text changes for this particular area. I'm happy to carry that torch for the town and for the commission. So if the commission feels there are other things that can be incorporated into this regulation, I'm happy to make that a part of my proposed regulation as well.
Sure.
We had worked with, I think with Jennifer Coppola. We are going back a ways, 8 years maybe, somewhere in there. And some of the property owners had some concerns. The main areas they were headed towards were office space and services and some of the retail. So you could cherry pick through and look at maybe even a few of the other uses that are there. The principal issue is the general industrial, the IG areas really don't allow a lot of those peripheral uses. I always say the IL zone is really the best zone. If you're a property owner, it's the widest variety of uses that you can have available to you. But some of those ILs, and it's up to the prerogative of the commission, we've talked about this before, but some of those other uses, I would love to see offices included in there. I think that would be very helpful for those property owners. And I don't think it's an offensive use. Tim's bringing this, I guess, for it. Is there a component of this where it has to have access from Sackett Point Road or frontage on Sackett Point Road? Is that something that would be important to the commission?
Well, why don't we go through the commission, Alan, and see what they got to say about this? Maybe they have some good ideas there. Jim, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have an idea.
Well, okay.
Let me tell you.
When don't you have an
I saw you, most times I do. I saw you very carefully say that you represent the kitchen company. Do you not represent the furniture store?
The furniture store is a tenant of the kitchen company, so I represent...
I didn't ask you that question. I said, do you represent them?
I represent the owner of the property, which is the kitchen company.
You do know that there's been enforcement issues with the furniture store?
I do know that, and one of the purposes of the application is to try to resolve some of those enforcement issues.
It concerns me because those enforcement issues are still going on as we speak, right now. They've been, to my understanding, but if you don't represent them, maybe you don't know. But our land use official told me that there's been enforcement issues with, is it Frugal?
Frugal.
And including signs all over the place. I know the feather signs, which I see are gone. but there's a sandwich board there right now, lit, which they have to know is not allowed. So I'm very concerned with doing something to allow this company to continue to do business when it clearly flaunts our enforcement. And before I forget, which doesn't have to do with you, I would like our zoning enforcement officer, we can talk about it afterwards. I'd like our zoning officer to give us a report, not come, to give us a report of what enforcement stuff she is doing. Because, for example, a couple of months ago, we had an issue with Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac,
Well,
sure.
we thought we did. And Quinnipiac, as it turned out, sent some stuff, but the enforcement officer was going after repeatedly Quinnipiac. I think we need to know that.
Okay.
Similarly, with this, I would like to know, I don't know the details. I haven't spoken with Laura, but I'd like to start getting a report from her. She used to a long time ago. And not a lot, but just give us some idea.
She
If
can
they
give us-
want her to come, she can give us a report.
Yep.
But I'm concerned with that because we've got an applicant, not the kitchen store. We've never had an issue with the kitchen store. But we have an applicant who has been told there's violations and continues to do the violations, and yet here you are telling us, hey, let us do something.
Well, I understand the concern. I'm not going to minimize the concern. And I'm aware of some of the signage violations, and I know the zoning enforcement officer had spoken to them about removing the little signs in the ground. They removed that. I don't know about the sandwich sign. I was out there today. I didn't notice it.
I was there 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Not only is it there, it's lit from lighting on the ground. So maybe they don't know they can't have sandwich signs. So my 2 cents, I'd like to hear from Laura about what has happened before I make a decision about this. Sure. That's just me.
And they'll know tomorrow morning, so I can tell you that. In terms of the application, I guess, irrespective of the fact that it's going to be applicable to Frugal, the question is retail appropriate along that section of
and we can
Sackett
talk
Point
about
Road? That's a bigger question.
Jim, you all set?
I'm all set.
Teresa? Come on.
I guess I'd like to look at, it's interesting, I realize, I remember what you talked about with the IL versus IG. I might want to look at, if we're going to propose an amendment here, make it a little more comprehensive, put a little more thought into what's on both sides. I think I'd maybe like to put this aside. I think, Jim, we should get answers as to what they're doing, but I think I'd also like to look at it a little further, have the board
Sure enough,
think
I
about,
think so.
talk to staff about
Yeah,
making it a little more
put it together
comprehensive.
and
What
And
did
I
you mean by
appreciate
both
Tim's-
sides?
I appreciate Tim, well, just think about what's on, how to make this just a little better for all the landlords, like we talked about. Maybe think about what other uses are there. We talked about the office buildings. And I appreciate his offer to maybe help us out with that amendment a little bit.
okay, good, thanks.
Okay, Vern?
Yep, very good, Teresa, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I agree, we should have some more information as to what's gonna go on, and what, if we go into retail in that IL, what happens to small business or light business that would come, does that affect it at all?
It would not affect it, because whatever permitted, as presently drafted, whatever permitted in the zone is still going to be allowed in the zone. This would just allow an additional use of certain types of retail. So whatever is there right now could remain there.
You're not going to remove any use.
Right.
No, we're not gonna take
Just
anything out,
add
we're just gonna
more
add to it.
options to them.
But I'd like a little bit more information.
Sure, well, we're gonna, I think everybody has something. Brian?
Right now, Tim, I think expanding the uses might be a good idea for that area. And because if we look at what's going in there in the past 10 years or so, have we seen any industrial going in there the past 10 years or so?
Not in the state of Connecticut,
No,
unfortunately.
okay.
Yeah.
So, the IL is something that, I don't know if we could be able to do that, but we do have IG there, and expanding the amendment to include more items and have us review it would be a very good idea.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Paul?
I just have one question. How long has Frugal been in business there, do you know?
I'm going to guess, but I'd say about 6 months or so.
Probably a hair longer. but
Yeah, a little bit
not-
longer.
Probably not a year.
No, but it's been close, 8 months or so.
And those weather signs were there for like 5 months of it.
I know.
Yeah.
Jim,
Rob?
just, what violations?
You're good?
The sign, just because, the signs are
It's
there.
mainly signage.
Signs are there,
Yeah.
okay, but they're,
But I don't know, to be honest with you, Brian. That's why I'd like to hear from.
but look
Well,
at,
let's just talk about signs for a second. Any sandwich board sign is not permitted.
Yeah.
So you can't have unanchored signs that could blow around, that would be
Yeah.
located where they weren't authorized to be, which might obstruct line of sight, be put in the right of way, or what have you. So that's not good practice.
I said that, because when I look
Also-
at, when I look at
yeah.
the map, I just see IG. I don't see that there's a space there, that is commercial on our map. I guess that was, when those companies went in there years ago, that was.
Well, and this is land use creep here, okay? So originally, the kitchen cabinet company owns the whole building. Okay, somewhere along the line, the kitchen cabinet company, I'm going to say around 1989, 1990, I think it was, decided to sublet some space or rent some space out to SK Lavery. SK Lavery was an affiliate of theirs. They did all sorts of business with them. They were an appliance store. And I think everyone's thought was, at the time, I'm guessing, wasn't here, was this is a wholesaler who deals with contractors in larger volume, is not a retail appliance store. It's not PC Richards or anything like that. So, okay, maybe that was what it was originally. So you have the two businesses. SK Lavery operates and their business morphs over 10 years, 15 years. Eventually, apparently, I never went to SK Lavery to buy an appliance, but apparently you could walk in off the street as a homeowner and you could buy one, which constitutes a certain portion of retail. Okay, SK Lavery leaves. Kitchen cabinet, Mr. Fecky, who owns the building, says, oh, I got another appliances, furniture, whatever, and he never even thought about it. Unfortunately, he also didn't think to get a change of use form and to complete that and to vet it, properly. We've talked about that. But here we sit, that's how it morphed.
That was kind of what I was getting at,
Yeah.
was there something there that was more than what's going on now? And it's retail that's there, but it's not on the map.
Right, and I think that's an issue. Sometimes businesses change incrementally over time. I think originally the kitchen cabinet company did principally commercial, multifamily, and they worked for contractors who were installing kitchens. Now, you drive right in that door, you can sign a contract, they'll build and order your cabinets and go and install.
Well, that's the whole thing of it there. The times changed over there, and that's
They
what
do.
happened. It changed, and they incorporated more into what they were doing, and that's the end of that.
That discussion just made a good case for the amendment.
Right,
No,
well,
I agree.
Well, here's-
Frankly, I agree with that, honestly. I think our regulation is probably out of date, and we need
Yeah,
to
so
look at it.
we're doing it.
There are other things that should go in there.
Yeah.
My concern is just that the only one in front of us is a kitchen company. It's their building, and they've got a tenant in there who seems to be ignoring our zoning enforcement officer, and that concerns me before we act.
right, and our
That's my
amendment may be quite out of date because it notes, luggage, all right, people still buy that, but we have records, typewriters, okay, no one's buying this stuff. So we may want to update
No,
some
it's
of
out
our
of date.
So
regulations.
in light of that discussion, can I ask to have the commission continue the application until next month? I'll sit down with Alan in between now and next month and see if we can make some changes to the regulation which may accommodate the concerns of the commission.
Good, we'll take that right up in deliberation, but I want to invite the public into this at this point. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Any questions?
If I could just add something about signs for a moment here. So if there's some question, we've got a couple of new commissioners
Not closing
here.
anything here.
We got some new commissioners here. You see a sandwich board sign, it's not permittable, okay? If you see, pardon me, tube man blowing in the breeze. Tube man is not a permittable sign, okay? If you see the little stuck in the ground signs, if it doesn't have somebody's name on it that you're gonna vote for within 60 days of an election, that's not legal. If you see a sign for a certain establishment and the sign is on another property, that is not legal. That's a billboard, a little tiny one, but that's a billboard.
Yep.
So those are the varieties, and yes, that particular location featured, I believe, every variety at one time or another. So
You
keep
want
that
to,
in mind.
let's get right into,
Did you ask if people on both sides?
He already asked.
yeah. You all set?
I'm all set. I would just ask that the commission consider
Yeah.
continuing the application to next month.
Sure, we'll continue in deliberation. Yeah,
Deliberation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer,
That's fine.
you're here to address one application, are you, that we need to take care of?
Well, I'm here under others, so it's fine for you to proceed. I came later because I knew you wouldn't reach me immediately.
We should have-
Did you
we should
have
have
an
a-
issue with regard to this matter that you?
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
we're good here, no. No, we're ready to move on, and I want to know if,
Let me just ask a question. What you are here about
Yes.
is also given to us as a site plan application. However, not on the agenda as a site plan application. So are we supposed to hear the site plan application, or are we supposed to, because I'm not sure what's going on, why we're hearing an application that's not on our agenda, because I don't know how anybody would know about it.
Or how does the public know?
It is not it was not a public hearing before you. This is a revised site plan to settle the matter, to eliminate the drive-through use that had been proposed initially, but perhaps you should proceed. I'll address it when it's reached. I think you should proceed with your agenda, because you,
Yeah, there's not much
Okay.
else other than that.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
but I'll get into a little bit more
Fair
detail
enough.
once it's reached.
all right, thanks, Teresa. Thanks,
That
Jim.
would be Jennifer.
Jennifer, you okay. Jim, when this came before us, this was not a public hearing to begin with. They came here with the signs.
Well, no, because they did come here with the
They came to
signs.
the signs, if you recall.
But regardless of that.
Yeah, they
you know,
still have to speak to
This
this.
was something that was a
Yes,
a
okay.
hot topic with a lot of people.
I know, I just wanted to refresh.
Okay?
Okay, good enough. Okay, we'll move on to P19-39. Teresa?
Application of Timothy J. Lee applicant, proposed amendment to the North Haven zoning regulations to amend sections 5.1.3.16.1, 5.1.3.16.3, 5.1.3.16.13, and 4.4.1.38.3 to modify the requirements that permit ILU, WMU, and UWMU developments in IL 30 and CB 40 zoning districts. The proposed amendment is on file in the Land Use Office and in the Office of the Town Clerk.
Good evening again. Timothy Lee. Once again, I am nominally the applicant, but I'm here tonight on behalf of my client, Vigliotti Construction. They are the owners of the property now at 441 and 447 Washington Avenue. We're here tonight seeking a text change to two separate regulations. The first regulation is the IL Upper Washington Multi-Use District. That district is applicable to the property that my clients own at 441 and 447 Washington Avenue. Exactly a year ago, the commission approved a special permit application for both of those properties. Under the special permit application, my client is eligible to build up to 150 residential dwelling units. In addition, 10% of the building has to be deemed non-residential, either commercial or retail type of use. In addition, based on the approval from the commission last year, 20% of the units have to be deed restricted as affordable housing. Under the specific terms of that regulation, the maximum number of units that were, residential units that were available in that district were 150. The commission approved 150, so under the current version of the regulation, we are not eligible to seek any more residential developments. Since the time the commission approved the special permit application, the owner of the property at 445 Washington Avenue has been in touch with my client and has offered to sell that property to my client. my client's interested in purchasing that property and making that third parcel part of the development. Obviously, in order to do so, my client needs to increase the residential density of the property. So according to the text we have in front of you tonight, we are proposing to allow 225 units in the Upper Washington multi-use district. 150 now exist. We're proposing an additional 75 units. So if the text change goes through and my client comes in with a special permit application, and that, if that gets approved by the commission, there would be a total of 225 residential units. We'd still be subject to the requirement that 10% of the square footage of the building be deemed non-residential, and also to the affordability requirement that the commission imposed upon us last time. The other half of the regulation, and we have to consider them both when we're considering the application, applies to the property across the street, and that's the Upper Washington Multi-Use District. And the commission had approved that regulation a number of years ago. That regulation is similar to the one we just discussed. However, it allowed up to 300 units of a residential property. There have been two applications subject to the Upper Washington Multi-Use District. One is the Flats at 520 Washington Avenue. That particular development has 125 units that are already built. In addition, a couple years ago, the commission approved an application at the Fantasia property for 88 residential dwelling units. So we have 300 that are permitted under the regulations. We have 125 that are built out. You have 88 that are approved. That comes to a total of 213 units either approved or built out under that regulation. So what our regulation does, it caps the number of residential units on that side of the street in that zoning district to 213, meaning nobody else can come in and seek additional residential units on that side of the street. So in essence, what we're trying to do is swap residential units on the
East side
of the
East side and
street
put them on the west side.
to the west side of the street. The net reduction would be a total of 13 or 12 less units than what could theoretically be built out under the current versions of the zoning regulations.
That it?
That is the
That's
gist of it.
Well, I think you said it all, as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't know where to dig into that, but
Yes,
Teresa, Jim, or Brian?
you can start
Who
from the
wants to
other
start?
side if you want.
Okay, I will.
These are separate, but not distinct, I guess, in that the five ones is on the west side of Washington Avenue,
Correct.
and that's in the Upper Washington Avenue Mixed Use District.
Correct.
In the IL 30 zoned area.
Correct.
Okay, just get that straight. And the fours are on the east side in the CB 40 district from like Scrub Oak Road all the way down to Blakesley there.
Basically, yes.
So and that 213 units is going all the way from Scrub Oak Road. I mean, not going all the way, but that's addressing that property?
Well, those 13 units are already either approved,
Okay.
so they consist of 125 units that are built. Those are the flats at 520 Washington Avenue. And also, the commission approved a couple years ago the residential units for the Fantasia property, and they approved 88 units. So under that side of the street, you could have 300 units, 125 have already been built, 88 have been approved. So there's 87 additional units that could be built under the current version of the regulations. We're just looking to cap that at the current approved amount
Okay.
and transfer those units across the street.
Okay. And
So that,
one other thing about that is that on the west side, we're talking heights, the railroad track side.
Correct.
Of 60 feet tall.
Correct.
And on the east side, 35 feet.
40,
yeah,
under 40.
under the multi-use district, the west side where the railroad tracks are,
Yeah.
that the building height under that regulation is 60 feet.
And then on the east side, it'd be capped at 35
No,
feet.
it's not 35, I think it's higher than 35, right?
Is it?
The flats are higher than 35.
You know,
Yeah.
There's a possibility to go higher, but you
Yeah.
have to be within a certain dimension
Yeah,
of
something.
Route 5
Right.
and a certain distance from the residential line.
Right.
So that's already in there.
That is.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, it could be a moot point if the commission approves the amendment, because there'd be no more available units to be approved on the east side of the street.
On the east side would be
Right.
finished.
That's,
So if the 88 or whatever it is there, where the banquet hall is, expires, and whatever reason, if we don't take any action between now and then, they could certainly get a renewal. But if in doubt, we change any of the regs up there, if it does expire, then that would be no more on the east side.
No.
No, I think if
Argument.
Fantasia expires, somebody could come in and there'd be 88 units that would be available for future
Yeah,
development.
88 left, okay. Okay, good enough.
88 to go anywhere within that.
Within that
Sidewalk Road, Douglas.
district,
Okay.
correct.
Paul?
You were saying it's 60 feet on that west side?
Yeah, on the west side.
And are you planning on going that whole 60?
Yes,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, we came before the commission last year for the properties at 441 and 447, and we got approval for those buildings, and that was 60 feet. The property now, that if the zone change goes through and our subsequent special permit gets approved, is the property kind of behind those that abuts the railroad tracks. So that property would be similar, I mean, it'd be a unified development between the three properties.
Okay.
Good.
Anything? You all
I
set?
think it's all right.
Teresa, Jim, whoever? Ross?
Oh, no, I have some questions.
Oh, sure.
Wait,
Go ahead.
Did you go right by it?
Go ahead, you
Okay.
can,
All right, so I have two issues, not surprisingly. One is, so now what happens if we grant this and the developer at Fantasy or whatever comes after Fantasy wants 5 more units?
I do not think you'd be able to approve 5 more units.
Well, exactly. So you're coming to us saying, give me 75 more units by taking them away from the other side. So that concerns me. The second thing that concerns me is when we approved what we approved, and quite frankly, this whole deal is not my favorite project, but there were real parking concerns. Real parking. So it's very hard to get everything. And now you're going to put, I know you're talking about taking another building, now you're going to put 75 more units there, when I didn't think we had enough parking for what was there before. So I'm extremely hesitant to go, for me, and vote for this without having some idea of how that's going to work. Because you're going to tell me, well, wait a minute, you can deal with it in the site plan, but then you're going to tell me, wait, it's allowed, so you have to grant it. And so rather than get into it then, I would prefer to get into it now. But I'm only one guy.
The only comment I'd have regarding the parking is that I think the parking was an issue because we had the property owned I'll call it the Durante parcel, for lack of a better term,
Right.
in the back, and we had some shared easements with them and some fences that cut through the parking lot, so we need to do some easements between the two properties. If we had prior that, so I think there was enough property there to accommodate the parking. Now we'll actually solve the parking issue because we're going to own the entire parcel, so it would moot out the easements between that other property and our two properties.
And I
But-
might feel a little better if I saw that, because I don't agree with your assessment that there was not a parking issue other than the easement issue. I thought it was more cramped than that. I thought there was a problem there. That's my recollection.
With regard to your other issue, and I know you threw out the number 5 because, just for probably no magic to it. If the commission wanted to preserve some units on the
No,
east
I
side
know,
of the
you've got
property,
it, you've
there's
left
a net of 13 units to play
But
with.
you understand this is all whose ox is being gored. You were saying, hey, give the 75 to me, take it from the other side, because nobody over there is asking right now. I get it,
Yeah.
and you're advocating for your client. I'm just a little concerned that this may not be the end of the, I'm not crazy about as many apartments as we have, but, so it appeals to me that we've knocked down some of them, but I think it's only a matter of time before somebody else comes along and says, we want to put up some more, but maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. So it seems to me that people are generally, have some feeling that this is not that bad. I would just like to see how this parking is going to work. It would make me feel better, but if you tell me that that's a site plan issue, so be it.
So parking was going to be one of my questions too, but I do remember, and I'm kind of familiar with his back building. So in that back building that we're proposing, are you still going to put the commercial component in, the retail commercial? Because I want to address that now before you come back and say,
Well, I would imagine, this is me, and I don't know if the owner would feel the same way.
Yes.
There's still the requirement that 10% of the square footage has to be retail/non-residential. It seems to me that the more attractive commercial property would be property that's closer to
Right.
Washington Avenue as opposed to further back in the railroad tracks. And I think that was the current owner of the property, that's one of the problems they were facing, is that that building that they have is a rear building, and they had trouble attracting commercial tenants back there.
so then, are you
I
going to,
think they have to put it in. I think they
so you're going to
put it
have to put it in? You're not going to come and ask?
Oh, no,
It's
we
gonna
had,
be- It's there?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The
Okay.
regulation that we drafted requires a 10% commercial.
And 20
I thought the question was, are we going to put it all on
Yeah.
Washington Avenue?
It's going to be a parcel. It's gonna be-
Right,
Yeah, it's gonna be
okay.
that same, but you have to put this in.
Correct, we have
So,
to do the commercial.
You have, no, I know you have to do it, but can you make it so it goes now more in the, are we taking all three buildings now as one parcel, I guess?
It is.
I
right.
assume
That's what
we're
we're
So
gonna
that
put
will
it together.
be,
That's what
okay,
we do.
got it, all right. And you're doing the affordable housing to 20%?
That's what you approved last time, so that's what's in the regulation.
Okay,
You got it?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is, if we're taking apartments away from the banquet hall.
Yep.
Did you ask them if it's all right to give up, or?
No, we're not taking away from the banquet hall. The banquet hall got approval for 88 residential units.
Right.
And we're keeping that in there. So right now, in that particular zoning district, you can have up to 300 residential units. There's 125 that's involved with the flat. The flats has 125 units, and the banquet hall has 88 units.
Right.
So that's a total of 213 units. So we're not seeking to take those units away. What the
Oh, I thought you
regulation
were
does.
taking some from one side
Well,
of the road to the other.
no, the regulation caps,
Yes.
the regulation caps the residential units on the east side of the property at 213. So the Fantasia's grandfathered in. We're not doing anything with regard to their approvals.
All right.
What we're saying is, you can't build out, under the regulation, you wouldn't be able to build out an additional 200, or additional 87 units.
Reg, if the right side
Yeah.
of Washington Avenue has a regulation similar to the left that they could have up to 300 units.
Yes.
He wants to add some to his side and take them from that right side, not from Fantasia. Fantasia only asked for 88, so that would still fit with his regulation.
Right.
But nobody else could put any more on that side. That's the way that they're saying, let us put it on this side,
This side, okay.
and nobody can put those other 87 on the right side. So he's saying there's a trade-off, you're not getting any more units, it's just they get to build more because they got another building.
Yep.
That's essentially what we're saying.
Essentially.
Okay. Anything else?
One thing, how many square feet are you talking about in these 225 units? You
I'm
know?
going to give you a rough number, because I don't know. When we were here a year ago for two buildings on two properties, I believe it was about 19,000 square feet for those two buildings. So I would assume roughly another 10,000 square feet, rough numbers.
So it'd be 4,000 or so in commercial, and then
10% of 30,000, yeah.
3,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yep.
I guess. Good?
Yeah. Okay.
You good, Paul?
yes, I'm good.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Okay, you good?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, that being said, is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Any questions? Okay, any other questions from the commission?
No, don't.
Staff?
No issue.
Okay, we're gonna close this. We all set? Okay, this public hearing is closed. Okay. We're moving ahead, and now we are over to, we're out of public hearing, so we will go right into other. Well, you want to take that now, or you want to take this
What?
do you want to take the K Brothers now? or the other?
Well, what about Timothy Drive?
It is the other.
Huh?
It seems to make sense to deal with Timothy
I think so.
Drive. I think it's going to be much briefer.
Well,
For
there is
better-
potential
For better, for
deliberation.
worse.
Well, I think so, but we'll take it later. Yeah, let's go on. Okay. You want to
No,
do?
he's
I'm saying I would just do Timothy Drive and then do the
Okay, good enough. Let's do Timothy Drive, it's under others. Tell us about it, Alan. If there's anybody here for Timothy
Oh,
Drive
there's someone here,
sidewalk?
yep.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mike Bennett. I'm a professional land surveyor in the state of Connecticut and a principal with Bennett and Smilas Associates, 415 Killingworth Road, Higginham, Connecticut. Timothy Drive, if you look at the board in front of me, there were two lots at the end of Timothy Drive that were approved in 2017. As part of that approval, there were two small pieces, if you can see them shaded in green, of sidewalk that were proposed as part of that development. There's one on either side of the road at the end of the cul-de-sac. They're approximately 22 feet each. They contain 218 square feet. In light of the subdivision that was recently approved to the north, that shows 7 frontage lots on this property here, the frontage lots over on Warner Road here. It's highly likely that the next phase of that development is going to have a road that's going to start on Warner Road and continue through and connect to Timothy Drive. I've been asked to come and talk to the commission about those two pieces of sidewalk by Clemente Martone, who's the owner of lots 1 and 2 here. They have developed 2 houses, a house on each lot, with paved driveways. The last item left on his bond from this subdivision is the construction of those sidewalks. He would like to get that construction waived from the standpoint that probably in the next few years, if Timothy Drive is extended to Warner Road, those 2 pieces of sidewalk are going to get torn up, and a new sidewalk will be constructed when the pavement is removed on the existing cul-de-sac and extended into the new development. That's why I'm here tonight, to ask you that. I also have some photographs of what he has completed out there in the way of pavement and everything.
One photo, Mike.
I've got 8 photos.
You got 8 photos.
Maybe more, if you want to see.
Let's just mark all the photos in group as
That's it.
Exhibit A.
So that's,
These are nice papers, but they're clean.
Oh, really?
There's
I
nothing on them.
apologize for that.
that's that, right?
Well, I don't, we can look at this, Mike.
But anyway,
Mike,
Mr. Martone, he's paved a nice, wide, common driveway in that area.
So that's.
The sidewalk really serves no purpose, in walking for pedestrian use throughout the subdivision. The existing sidewalk is a bituminous sidewalk. It ends over here. And this is only accessing at this point his 2 lots. And he just, doesn't want to spend the money, pave the sidewalks, and then see them all torn up again in a couple years.
So he was gonna put asphalt in there for the sidewalk.
Yeah, he's,
Same as the rest.
he has a nice wide asphalt driveway
Yeah.
in that area, which would make it fairly easy to walk on.
So are there sidewalks around the cul-de-sac now?
No, there are no sidewalks around the cul-de-sac. The sidewalk ends right here,
Okay,
and it's a bituminous sidewalk.
okay.
So it's not connecting anything.
Anybody got a plan, anybody got a picture up there?
If the road does go, and those driveways are gonna be really shortened up, truncated quite a bit
Yes,
from where
they
they are.
will be truncated, and they will come from the house straight out to the new road. Okay? And also, as part of the development to the north,
Sidewalks they're talking
and
about, they don't want to do.
this
Sidewalk comes up
subdivision
over
years
here.
ago, there were significant drainage
Two pieces.
issues in
Okay.
Timothy Drive subdivision. One of the commitments as far as the first phase of the development was up here would be that this developer is going to help resolve some of those drainage issues by taking these two cul-de-sacs at the end, or these two catch basins at the end of the cul-de-sac and pipe the stormwater into his subdivision as opposed to let it going back into the Timothy Drive subdivision into this detention basin that overflows at certain times. I think it's benefit to the town and everybody to get this road approved, and, you know, my client is just asking for a waiver of a couple pieces of sidewalk
It certainly is
that
a
are
lot,
going to
but
get,
that,
I was looking for
you gotta get that water out of there, that is a problem over there with the water, of course.
Basin. You want,
If the road goes in sidewalk two, and there is a reserve septic area on lot one, that's pretty far away from where that sidewalk would go and that road would be. That's not gonna be hurt by that, is it?
yes, it is. If you look in the shaded area down here, that's a 50-foot wide strip.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a 24-foot road centered within that 50-foot wide strip.
So the sidewalks are part of that 50-foot strip?
And the sidewalk will also be within the 50-foot strip.
Rich, any question?
No.
Paul? No. Teresa, Jim, what do you think?
no, I'm fine,
So here's my question. This says that the 50-foot easement, 50-foot right-of-way to be dedicated to the town of North Haven. So who owns this land right now? Still the developer?
The owner of this land right now is Clemente Martone. The owner of these two lots, lots 1 and 2. That dedication
Yeah.
has to be made to the town, the easement's filed, and the dedication prior to release of bond for his subdivision.
So is Mr. Clementi the developer? That's what I'm trying to understand. Have these lots been sold, or are they
No,
his?
Mr. Clementi owns them. He lives in one house, and his daughter lives in the other house.
So he has agreed to give this easement for?
Yes,
the
that
town?
was
think
part
it's written in
of
there,
the
Jim.
subdivision approval
It was part of
in
the subdivision.
2017.
Okay, and
Yes.
the town, okay, so that's part of the subdivision approval, that the right-of-way, the town
Correct.
is to get that right-of-way?
Yes,
Okay. And then, as Brian had said, if that road goes in, then these driveways will now no longer come down to that cul-de-sac area.
they'll go straight out, correct.
And you're telling me that you think we'll get sidewalks up and down this thing when the time comes?
We're gonna take a shot at it anyway.
That's right.
We gotta take a shot at it.
We'll give you a shot at it. I mean, we'd like to do them on, you know,
Yeah,
one
I
side
get it.
right
That's
there.
fine.
on one side
You
of
know,
the
I don't
street
like to give
anyway.
up sidewalks,
I
but
know that. Rod?
that's,
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you. So let's just say hypothetically,
Rod, you gotta jump in.
developer of the Borelli parcel wants to extend that road or connect into the end of that road. Would you see them filling in those fillets of the cul-de-sac?
I would think that would be a requirement of the future. I'm sure that Mr. Bevilacqua would want to see that happen. Also, the end of this cul-de-sac and those two catch basins that exist there today, they are in a low point on the road. So, you know, filling in the pieces of cul-de-sac that are outside the 50-foot right-of-way will channel the water more directly into those catch basins so that it can be collected and piped out to the north.
Those are turned, are they not?
They-
They would be parallel with an extension.
Yeah, they would have to be,
From way back when.
yeah, the frames or possibly even the catch basins themselves may have to be revised and changed.
Sidewalks on Timothy now, there are some, correct, that terminate at the cul-de-sac, the beginning of the cul-de-sac?
They terminate at the beginning of the cul-de-sac. They are bituminous
They are
sidewalks.
by two.
Only on the west side,
Correct, and they're only on the west side of the road.
no sidewalk.
Good.
on the east side.
Rod?
So where would the piping go from these catch basins? Is it straight to the north, under the driveways, or?
Well, it would stay, the driveways in this area are going to be dug up for the reconstruction of the new road. And that piping will go essentially in the west gutter line of the new road. And then connect into this development and be part of the stormwater system for that development.
Thanks.
You good? Okay, good enough. Anything else from the commission? Staff? I think that's good, Mike.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jennifer?
If I could just ask the secretary to read the next two items
I can't hear
into
you.
the record?
Yes, I have to read.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next one is P18-37, 224 Quinnipiac Avenue. Number one, discussion of the status of the pending litigation in K Brothers LLC versus Planning and Zoning Commission of Town of North Haven, and potential settlement thereof based upon a proposed revised site plan, and possible action relating to the same. A copy of the proposed revised site plan is on file at the Land Use Office located in Town Hall Annex. Public comment will be permitted. Number two, consideration of whether to convene an executive session to discuss the status of pending litigation in K Brothers LLC versus Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of North Haven, and potential settlement thereof based upon a proposed revised site plan and possible action relating to same. A copy of the proposed revised site plan is on file at Land Use Office located in Town Hall Annex.
Okay. So you will recall that I apologize, Mary Lee. Jennifer Capola from Sewell and D'Onofrio, counsel for the commission. You will recall that I was here at your December meeting, and I did meet with you in executive session. We were approached by, and I would like to invite Krista Smith forward, counsel for the applicant with regard to settling this matter. And the settlement, in essence, principally, the most critical element of it is the submission of a revised plan that eliminates the use of the drive-through. Just to answer Commissioner Giletti's question, it's been some time, I think, that since we've actually settled a matter with a revised site plan, or even a motion for stipulated judgment. But the practice book provides the procedure that we follow, and specifically, it's practice book section 14-7BJ. I want to just read you the language so that you all understand. So this practice book section permits the decision being appealed to be modified by settlement or stipulated judgment after it has been approved at a public meeting of the municipal agency that issued the decision, and that practice book language is specifically that the proposed settlement shall be identified on the agenda of such meeting, which agenda shall be posted in accordance with the applicable requirements of General Statute Section 1-210 et sec, which is FOIA. And the reasons for such approval shall be stated on the record during such public meeting of such agency and before the court. So after you act upon the revised plan this evening, there is a hearing in court and you probably have seen publication of this in the Courier where your notices are published. And we've talked about this before. We publish a notice of 8-8N hearing, which is this statutory section that allows the court to grant a motion to withdraw based upon a settlement or the entry of a stipulated judgment. So I do actually do a separate notice, and the public has the opportunity to attend a hearing in court that's specially scheduled. And the details of where the public has to go on the date of the hearing is all detailed in the notice of the 8-8N hearing. So that's the process that's dictated by the practice book and by the general statutes. So I'm just going to have Jim
Well,
Rotundo.
wait a second, before you bring them up. So this is what my concern is. This says, public comment will be permitted. Now, I have to tell you, I read this agenda and I had no idea that this site plan was coming in front of us, because it's not listed on the site plans. I get it, it's part of the settlement. But this was something that the public had enormous interest in. They don't know that this is going down, and they're not going to go down to the court. So I'm concerned. I want the public to be able to come here if they're going to be able to have public comment. And I don't think this is good enough notice to the public that that's what was going to happen tonight, for me. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm not casting aspersions in any way. But I don't have any problem with listening, but I think we should be giving the public the ability to go and comment on this, because for me, and I don't want to talk about executive session, but the issue was clearly the drive-through for the most part. But that wasn't the only issue, so I think people should be able to say something. So I don't know how we resolve that for me, and we don't have to resolve it for me. If there's 5 of us, we got to decide how we go. We can go ahead and listen to this and make a decision on it, but I would like the public to, if a lot of people do watch these things. So maybe we could listen to it and make the decision next month, if that's okay. I am just kind of throwing out ideas. I just want people that hear about this, the opportunity to come in and say, this is a really bad idea, or it's a really good idea. You know, that's my 2 cents.
So I think the way that we would address your concern, and again, if it's the concern of the other commissioners as well, certainly have a discussion about that, would be to include it in the public notice of your meeting. That obviously I think is what you're asking.
Right.
You feel as though the just posting it on the agenda in the due course of an agenda is not sufficient notice to the
But
public.
I'm going to tell you that because I didn't know that we were doing this, and I read the agenda, and I didn't get it, that we were going to listen to this site plan tonight and decide on it. So I'm worried that the public also would not catch that.
Okay.
So, and to tell them that they can go to court and it's going to be a public hearing in court, forget it. I mean, they could, but they're not going to.
Well, and most of them were seniors who were here, so I think that's kind of putting it unfair.
It's unlikely that they
Right.
would.
So I'm not looking
Yeah.
to hamstring anybody, but that's my concern, I guess.
Well, Jennifer, first off, we have something under other here, what is a site plan. If we back up, and listen, I agree with Jim that the people would like to have an input on this, but how do we turn a site plan that originally came, that they filled the room with signs and motions and whatever else they did, but they did not speak in respect to this? You know, we got the message that they didn't want it, for sure, but it wasn't under a public hearing. So how do I change this for public input now, or do you change it, or how do I do it?
Well, again, I think it would be if you were inclined to do what I think would address Commissioner Giletti's issue, it would be including it in the public notice, and it would be, the language would be similar to what is appearing on your agenda. Because the language that we used, and we went through it very specifically, the language that was used is its settlement again by submission of a proposed revised plan. And the plan, it does not, and you will hear this, and you have comments also from your staff, and I'm sure you reviewed it as well. It doesn't just eliminate the drive-through. There were some other changes that were made, but that was, the substance that seemed to be of principal concern. So why don't we proceed, and then I'll come back to you and we'll talk about what will happen next.
Before we
Okay.
deliberate on it.
Before you deliberate.
Okay, good enough. Okay.
So, again, we have Attorney Smith, we have Jim Rotundo here, and they will present it to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should enough. Come ahead. You read the whole thing in.
I read everything in,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, professional staff, Madam Court Reporter and Clerk. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I am a land use attorney with the law firm of Alter and Pearson, and I appear before you this evening on behalf of K Brothers LLC. With me this evening, on behalf of K Brothers, we have Nadeem Khalid, who is the director. I think you met Nadeem, Mr. Khalid, during the application process. He's Director of Construction, Maintenance and New Products of CCO and Sam's Food. And K Brothers is a sister company of CCO LLC. With us this evening, this is important for the company, we have Richard Morgan, who is corporate counsel, and then the team rounds off with Jim Rotundo, our engineer from Godfrey and Hoffman Associates with offices located here in North Haven. As Attorney Coppola indicated, this is a proposed settlement. It's not a new application, it's not a revised application, it's a request to consider approving a settlement, which would be a portion, in this case, a portion of the application that had been submitted to you. It's not the full application. I think everyone understood that the neighbors located behind the site, as you're well aware, is 224 Quinnipiac on the corner of Quinnipiac and Montouise, were concerned about the drive-through that was going to be on their side of the building, so to speak. And my client, K Brothers, has made a determination to eliminate the drive-through. With permission of the chair in a moment, we'll have Mr. Rotundo get up and we'll just show you the modifications that were done relative to eliminating that drive-through. However, there were other components, as Commissioner Giletti indicated, relative to the proposed site plan. And again, it's a site plan. What you're going to see tonight complies with your regulations, square footage, coverage, everything else that is applicable to this use for this property. But as you're well aware, part of the goal was to reconfigure the pumps, some of the building, and some other things that Jim will walk you through a little more, to enhance it. And I've been driving by that since I was this tall, and hopefully you feel the same way. It's going to make it better. It's going to be more competitive. And I don't like to use the word safer, but it's the maneuverability with the relocation of the pumps will be better if the commission were to approve it. So again, it is a proposed settlement. This is the way the court set it up. They came to the Bar Association. We sat down, we had a committee, sat down with the court and went through this and how it was going to be handled, because as Commissioner Giletti has indicated, the court was a little confused, even themselves, the judges, on how to handle this type of process. And as Attorney Coppola indicated, Town Attorney Coppola indicated in the practice book, there's a reference to a public meeting, because the courts, some of the judges were talking about, Judge Berger and some other judges were talking about having a public hearing, and it was decided just to have it set up just the way it is in the practice book, where you can go into deliberation in executive session. If you do, you come out, and then you would announce what you did and the reasons for it, and then you could take public comment. Or you can just hold it in public as you're doing right now. And the court decided to just provide for the regular notice on the agenda, which has been done, and then it would show up as the same with the court relative to the hearing. Town Attorney Coppola goes much further in requiring, in my opinion, and I know that every court handled these a little differently, believe it or not, but actually publishes, has the notice of the court hearing done, which I don't see that in most other courts. That's an extra notice that you just don't see in this process. But we understand Commissioner Giletti's comments and the chair's, and we're open to discuss that. But at first, I think if we can have Mr. Rotundo get up and just walk you through the process. Sure. I would like to thank your town attorney, Jennifer Coppola, for working with me in particular and then with my client to explore a possible resolution to this appeal. And my client as well is very grateful for her input, as well as your professional staff took the time to meet with us, and for the commission in going into executive session, discussing this and permitting us to be here this evening. So having said that, if I can turn the podium, so to speak, the mic over to Mr. Rotundo, he can walk you through these changes.
Good enough. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jim Rotundo. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Godfrey Hoffman Hodge, with our offices located at 26 Broadway here in North Haven. I'd just like to kind of go back to the beginning. I know it's been a while, kind of summarize what's going on here. The board I have up right now is the existing condition of the site. Quinnipiac Avenue to the right or to the east, Montauk Avenue to the top. There's an existing building about 2,000 square feet. There's the parking area along the building. The pumps are located on the Quinnipiac Avenue side. There are currently 3 driveway cuts into the site, one off of Montauk Avenue, 2 off of Quinnipiac, 1 close to the intersection, 1 a little further down from the intersection. Parking currently is along the outside of the pavement on Montauk and around the building. This drawing here was our original plan. Basically, I'm not going to touch on everything, but the major components here was the relocation of the gas pumps from along Montauk Avenue, rotate them around, increasing from 2 pump islands to 3 pump islands. One of the purposes for this is better circulation through the pumps. We're going to remove the driveway cut that's closest to the intersection, so the site will only have 2 driveway cuts now, one from Montauk Avenue and one from Quinnipiac Avenue, which is the existing cut further away from the intersection. In this plan, we had proposed a drive-through around the building. Parking was reconfigured on the site, parking spaces on either side of the building, some parallel spaces along the perimeter of the site plan there. What we're proposing in our revised plan is removal of the drive-through. Pump islands will stay the same. Our curb cuts will stay the same. Parking's provided around the building. Essentially, this parking area along the front from paved surfaces remains as it exists today. On the westerly side of the building, the existing edge of pavement is pretty much aligned with where the edge of our parking is there. Within that area, there's loading for the building. There's also trash removal areas. What we're proposing with our revised site plan is extending that pavement area there, which was sort of, it was in the original plan. I could go back. We're relocating the trash and the loading to that side of the building, which will remain in this revised plan. It'll separate those operations from the parking area. We have trash removal, an enclosed dumpster, and a proposed loading area. In addition, as I had mentioned, the existing building is about 2,000 square feet. There are 2 small additions proposed to the building totaling about 730 square feet. That's a portion off the back of the building and one off to the west side of the building. The addition on the west side of the building is for installing new coolers. Off the back of the building, the main intent there is to put in new toilet facilities, bathrooms, become ADA compliant. Right now, the only restroom facilities are in the building, or actually you have to go through the office space to get to the restrooms. So that addition off the back will allow for a new office area within the building and bringing restrooms up to ADA compliance. With this, which was also part of the existing plan, we will be installing landscaped islands and landscaping throughout the site, which is not in the existing current site plan. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If I have any questions.
Okay, so on the west end of the building, the westerly end of the building, it's going to be your loading dock per se. Is that going to be it?
That's correct.
And you're going to have some coolers out there
Not inside the building.
inside the building?
That's correct.
Is that
Inside the building, in this area here.
within the red?
That's correct.
That's the addition. Okay, so, and that's going to be a loading dock on the outside of that, is that correct?
Not necessarily a dock, it'll just be a doorway in. It's a loading area where the trucks could pull in, and they could park there, and they could unload and deliver into the building. So it's not an overhead door, a traditional loading dock area.
Okay, could you tell me where the ADA bathrooms are going to be, how they're going to penetrate the addition in the back?
Well, the addition in the back, I haven't seen the floor plan, but from my understanding, and if I'm speaking out of turn, please jump in, that there's an internal office for use with the store, and the restrooms are actually located off of that office. So anybody that needs to use a restroom, a public restroom, has to go through the office. So that would all be reconfigured in there, so it would be direct access into the store for patrons to use those restroom facilities rather than going through an office.
Sure,
As
I
well
understand
as
that.
not only access, but bringing them up to code as far as clearances and so forth.
Right, but it will be penetrated into that additional area there. Into the addition, right.
That's where they would be located.
Okay. You're going to have that, the traffic flow going to be one way, or is it going to be both exit, entrance and exit?
Two-way circulation.
Two-way on both ends?
That's correct.
Same as you have now?
That's correct.
Okay, good enough.
Hours of business be the same as it was before?
That's right, yes.
And the coolers are inside, they're not outside making noise for the
Everything is
neighbors?
interior in
Yep.
the
Okay.
building.
Rick,
No question.
you're good? Okay. Teresa? Jim?
So frankly, I don't have a problem with this myself. One question I have is at the application, I think there were some negative comments by the police chief. Has the police chief seen this?
No,
Here comes Jennifer.
I don't believe so.
And maybe we're coming back anyway, but shouldn't this be run by the police chief? And Jennifer, you can jump in. Because he definitely had comments at the last hearing. I think essentially they were mainly about the driveway, but I don't know if they were only about the driveway. So I would think it would behoove us to get a comment from the police chief.
And if I may, if you check the date received on these drawings, it's December 31st at about 10 of noon. We close at noon. So again, not casting aspersions on anyone, but
I get it.
yeah, it
But
wasn't a normal route.
I think we should have a comment.
Okay.
I mean, my comment was gonna be a little bit more about lighting and things like that too, that I'm not seeing, and I think the neighbors had some concerns about that as well. So, that's it.
Yeah, if you just want to take some notes on this, gentlemen.
Yes, we had some lighting proposed with that drive-through, which will be removed. We are proposing some new site lighting. As Mr. Frederickson commented, what we would do as a potential condition of approval, to provide a full lighting plan, they'd have full cutoff shields so that there'd be no light trespass off the property and so forth, so neighbors would be protected.
Okay,
The lights are shown in terms of their location,
right,
but some of those details are not on there, so I left a
well,
comment
he
there.
answered some of my questions about it. I didn't even see your comment on there. That's one of my questions. Right. I didn't see where he said.
And today, the existing lighting's on.
You gotta go up to, sir.
Well, that's, Chris Smith for the record. Today, the existing conditions with the lighting, my understanding is it doesn't have any shielding or any of the typical, dark sky type components.
Okay.
Okay, where are we now, folks? Jim?
Well, I don't know, what do we,
Yeah,
you tell
Well,
us?
How are people, I don't mean to, I'm sorry.
I think you should.
We're all, do you have any, for the most part? Yeah, I
I think we're done with our questions, right?
okay,
Yeah.
I want to make sure. Rodney, you
Pretty good.
all set?
Yeah.
Okay, continue on.
We'd rather not, but.
So we will include language with regard to this matter, to this settlement, in the notice of public hearing that goes out for your February meeting. So that way it's included in that notice so that the public sees it. We will send the revised plan to the chief tomorrow to get any comments that he has. I think, though, he was principally concerned with the traffic generation
think
by
so,
the
too.
drive-through.
Does it go to
Because I
fire
did
as well?
review the record.
It'll go to fire as well again?
Sure,
Proposed?
yeah, I think.
I don't
Yeah,
remember,
yeah, sure.
I don't remember.
Fire was good with it, but
Okay.
I think we
I
should.
think not, and I have no issue, we send everything to the PD for comment, but, yeah, I think the bulk of their comments involve the traffic flow with the drive-through. Again, the idea, I think the commission's comments all along were, if this site plan were just a reconfiguration of what was there, we wouldn't have any particular problem with it, what have you. It's all about the drive-through. So we'll send it back to them and see what we've got.
Agreed.
Well-
So,
Go ahead, Jim.
what do we do now? What do we practice?
We got, just,
You don't need to do anything.
Okay,
continue.
so it's gonna come up on
it's-
next month's agenda?
Yes, it'll come up
Right.
on next month's agenda,
I think
and
what-
you don't need to take any action.
Okay,
It's
fair
fine.
enough. But I think what Vernon might have been asking before, not for words in his mouth. So how does it come up on the agenda next time? Is it, because if it's a site plan, there isn't public comment, your provision talks about public comment, so how do we allow public comment?
Again, we'll use similar language to what you're seeing there.
Okay. So
We
they'll be able to
will
make public
indicate
comment?
so that the public knows that they'll be able to comment, because that is the expectation placed upon us by the court.
Understood.
I get questioned about that when we do an 8-8N hearing, whether or not, was there a meeting? And Judge Cordino is very particular, which is why, as Chris indicated, he always asks, did you publish the additional notice of the hearing today? So that the public knows that they could come to court and they could comment as well. So, that's become my practice through the years when we settle a matter.
okay, so,
That's not
so we're gonna, just let me find out, we're gonna continue this to next month, is that what we're gonna do?
Well,
We're not even gonna do
we're
it.
not even
You
gonna
don't
continue.
even
We're
need
not
to.
bringing it up.
You're gonna do a new thing in February that's gonna involve the settlement hearing.
Okay, the whole thing over.
Yeah.
So we don't need to
That would be
say,
good.
we don't need to say anything right now. You
Okay,
just
good
go
enough.
sit
You don't
need to
down
say
and we
anything.
go into the.
All right,
Good
good
enough.
enough.
We'll take
I'm
care
not
of
good
it.
at
As
No,
Kissinger
you-
said,
Jim, you'll
talk
come
to
with
the
it.
useful. All right.
We'll have a full house.
Everybody will know.
We'll have a full house, good enough. But I'm still not.
Think we'll do it.
Okay, we're not doing nothing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen. Huh? Thank you. Okay, let's move
All
forward.
right, so,
We have extensions,
yeah, McDonald's.
extensions, it'll be a P18 dash,
At this point, we could deal with the rest of this in deliberations. If you want to get a motion to go into deliberations.
okay? Take a motion to
can-
go into deliberation.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Now, if I may, we do have two new alternates. Rod's kind of new, but alternates can't speak during the deliberations unless they're sitting, but just want to recap.
okay. All right, here we are on, can I get a continuation and approval to continue P19-38, Tim Lee, as far as Sacker Point Road Amendment goes?
I'll make a motion, we continue that to next month.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's continued. All carried. Okay, P19. You okay, Pam? Okay. 19-39. This is Tim Lee, and we have a little discussion on this. This is on Washington Avenue, without citing all these amendments, but he wants to amend it, and we know what it's all about, to amend the regulation to allow the housing to go from one side to the other. And I guess you have everything written in for that. Okay, you take it.
I'll open it up. I mean, not my apartments were interesting for North Haven, for me in particular, but the fact that they are coming up with taking these apartments, this proposal of taking them off of where they could abut residents on the west side, or the east side, and taking them and putting them on the west side, next to the railroad tracks. I think I like this regulation for that purpose, okay? Also the fact that it's, we're going with our affordable, but more importantly, I think it might open up that other side of the road now for a little more cohesive development now that we'll just have those two apartment complexes on one side. And we're already gonna have two existing buildings in front of the proposed building, so I think it makes a nice organized project.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. Jim?
Thank you.
Well, I've got my reservations about it. First of all, there's not really a proposed building, because we don't know what's proposed yet. All they've proposed so far is to change the regulation.
That's it.
So we don't, it sounds like there's gonna be a third building. I am not comfortable, for me, voting on this without having some idea how the parking's gonna work. Again, you can argue, I agree with you about not liking things up against the residential neighborhood on the east side of Washington Avenue. That being said, I know this is gonna come back and bite us, I just know it. And so I've got reservations, and I would like to see more before I voted on it, but, yeah, one vote.
Good enough. Good enough, Jim. I understand what you're saying, Jim, and I can appreciate it. I certainly have my concerns, but this is just to allow them to bring back, this is an amendment to the reg, so they can come back and show us what they want to do, and I guess we can have our input then, which you will, and I know what you said before, you should have said before, you should have, would have, but the fact of the matter is, I think we should go ahead and make the amendment, in my opinion. Rich?
Well, I like having the apartments built over on the railroad track side of the highway instead of on the residential side. So if we can get the apartments over there, I would be in agreement with that.
Brian?
I'm pretty much in agreement with that, moving things over to the west side, and just, because those people have lived there in the residential for years and years and years, and to have them all of a sudden in a building right next to them, I mean, yeah, well, they're still gonna have some, but, yeah, this is an amendment.
It helps out. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the amendment for Washington Avenue?
I make a motion to approve.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. 4-1. Okay, thank you very much. Timothy Drive, can I get a motion? I know this is a sidewalk deal, and it's very difficult not to do them, but in this case, I'd like to have a motion to waive the two pieces of sidewalk, so he wouldn't have to put them in, because I don't think there's any question that property is going to be developed and the road is going through there. So if somebody would make a motion, or anybody wants to comment further, by all means do it. But I'd like to get a motion to approve.
Just so, no, I don't have a problem with it, but I won't make the motion.
I'll make the motion to waive the sidewalks.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. 5-0, good.
Just general principle, couldn't do
I
it.
just wanted to see if I can make it.
That was a good one. Okay, we're going on to extensions now. Extensions of, this is McDonald's down on Universal Drive, 365 Universal Drive. They would need an extension, I guess, whatever it was, last year or 2 years ago, they were gonna rehab the place and never carried it through. So they need extension now,
I
isn't that the
think
deal?
there was a budgetary issue where they hadn't budgeted the money, whatever the group was that owns it, in a particular fiscal year. They now have the money in place. They were ready to go forward, and they missed the ability to post a bond by, I don't know, 2 weeks or something, but
I'll make a motion, we approve the extension.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, very good. Bond releases, this is on P06-3485 Defco Park. Andy, would you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this is one that's just been hanging out a long time. He really didn't do all the improvements that he wanted to do on the site, but he did make the changes to the parking lot. He did add the plantings that we required. He has no intentions of doing all the things that, some of the things that he had proposed in the back in terms of equipment coming in and stuff like that. So, this is a bond that's hanging out there that he has no intentions of completing the construction of his equipment expansion that he was going to do. So Alan and I have kind of worked with him. We've gone out there a few times, met with him and gone over things. He did do the parking lot improvements. He did do the plantings that were required. And I just assumed push the bond out and, move it on.
You're satisfied with it?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with it. Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
explain that to me so that I understand. Which business is this?
It's the guy who's processed the pallets.
The pallet?
Yeah.
okay.
custom recycling, I think is the name of it.
So, does that mean he's not finishing his site plan? I mean,
Yeah, there was equipment that he was going to purchase and set up in the back of the building.
but does the site plan show that equipment?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
part?
yeah.
So should the site plan be revised? Because
Well, he's provided us with an as-built that shows what was done, what wasn't done. So that's
That's-
essentially,
what was done is not in compliance with the site plan though, right? Or it didn't finish what was in the site plan, right?
correct. Just in terms of the equipment that he was going to
I get
provide.
what you're telling me.
Right.
Are you telling me that even if he did want to do the other things, it doesn't have anything to do with the bond? The bond's for public improvements, right?
This is an '06 bond, so it covered a lot more than just the public improvements on it. I think it's a $20,000 bond.
You're right, it would be now, but it wasn't then.
Right. back
It was
then.
an old-style bond,
What does that mean?
So it covered basically all of his site improvements.
prior to the
Yeah.
change in state
Oh, okay,
statute that
okay,
said you can't do that anymore.
Right, okay. So if it were today, we wouldn't have this bond anyway.
That's correct. We would have an erosion control bond, and that's probably about it, so.
Got it.
Just one of these legacy things that,
I got
makes
it.
sense to clean up and get rid of.
Jim, you good?
I am good.
Okay. Teresa, you good?
Yeah,
Okay, can I motion to release this bond?
I'll make a motion to release the bond.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, bond is gone. Okay, can I get a motion to approve December 2nd meeting, 2019?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have
for a second, I've lost my paper.
okay. All in favor?
Wait, she asked you to wait a
Okay,
second.
Hold on,
you good?
We're on minutes now, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, motion.
Teresa made the motion,
Thank you.
and
Brian seconded.
Brian seconded.
Thank you.
You got it?
Now I do.
Thank you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So before we do that,
Oh,
remember
oh.
what we talked about?
Right.
Could you please let
Alan?
Laura know?
Go ahead.
If the commission is on board,
I'm-
just to
I'm-
give us
I'm with you,
a
sure.
statement of what her, not come here, not, I
just-
don't need a,
just
you
to
know,
note
5
what she's
pages,
doing.
just a notice of what enforcement actions she's doing.
Yeah, I think, as I recall, some time back, Art Hausman used to do
Yeah,
a
right.
report which
Right.
would list addresses that had
Whatever it is.
issues or what have you, and then,
See, that
what
way
the
at
issue
least
was.
we know if somebody is an issue, we probably won't get involved in it, but if they then come in front of us,
We know about it.
we'd know about it. Right, so if that's acceptable to the commission, she serves,
Yeah.
she serves as an agent of the commission, so if she could just give us a, brief statement, that'd be great.
Good enough. We'll take care of that. We'll take care of that, for sure. Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, folks.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.